You lay down? What are you looking at, Bubba? There we go. They feel good. They feel good. Right here. Here. Are you getting the beauty treatment? Hmm? Are you the beautiful? How do you have this much hair, bud? Like, where does it come from? Hmm? Ooh. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another riveting edition of Conservation Conversations. My name is Shauna. I will be your host today. With me is Ambassador Tiberius. And, I mean, I don't know if she's really with us, but Ambassador Wyatt is absolutely in her own plane of existence, having a good time today. And then the magical voice that you hear in the sky is Paul. So, forgive me. We are doing an impromptu grooming session with Tibby. You gonna lay down? Flop over? No? Okay. These guys blow their coats once a year, so we are getting all of the hair. It is fantastic, and we try to keep on top of grooming these guys, keep them comfortable, keep them cool. So we have a little bit of their undercoat left that has to come out. So we're just, yeah, we're expecting temps between 95 and 100 this coming week. So super hot, super dry. And because these guys are predominantly outside, they like to be nice and cool. Thankfully, they're not in here all the time. They have I don't know if you can see it behind us, but all of the green space that you can see is theirs. We have I don't know, maybe 1,000-gallon stock tank for them. Don't quote me, I don't know the size. It's big and it fits two puffy woofies quite comfortably. And they enjoy splishy splashing. So, yeah, we're gonna do an impromptu grooming session while we have our conservation conversation, or not, or he just is gonna walk away and say, "Just kidding." Bud, what happened? You just had to go do the stretches? Okay, thank you, sweetheart. So, Paul, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what our topic is today? Absolutely. I think when we think of any animal, not just wolves, in myths and legends, we don't really think it has that much of an impact on how our laws are constructed or how we handle conservation today, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The conceptions and or perceptions that we have of these animals, it is what drives us. Fortunately, we have a lot of folks that are maybe misinformed or rely on a lot of those old myths and legends to influence their perceptions of these animals, and it takes away from the important work that these animals actually do when it comes to their role in their habitats and their ecosystems. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how these animals not just influence their ecosystem, but how they are perceived both positively and negatively. Can we do a sit, please? No, you're just okay. We're gonna do a headbutt today. So Paul, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna rely on you to guide this conversation while I am half focused on this guy. Got a fly on you, bud. So I'm sure you have heard of Little Red Riding Hood. I can't think of anybody who hasn't heard of that fable. It's a European fable that is, depending on who you ask, was either around in the 1300s or possibly the 1100s, so quite old. And how do we look at wolves in that story? Like, what is the term that comes to mind? Or phrase? I'll give you a hint, it's in our name. There you go. So that aids in our perception of a big bad wolf. Don't go into the forest alone. Even if your intentions are good, don't go into the forest alone, because the big bad wolf might be waiting. He might be lying to you and deceiving you and trying to trick you because he wants to do you harm. Right? But then you have stories like Romulus and Remus, who were the founders of Rome. And in that story of their birth and how they were raised, they were nurtured by a she-wolf. So, and that is how they describe it in the story, she-wolf. Not female wolf, she-wolf. So they were raised by a female wolf and nursed by a female wolf. So, we revere Rome and all of the modernisms for that time that culture brought about. And we have a positive, or that culture has a very positive, there's a wasp. There are very positive depictions of wolves in that culture, right? Because they think of wolves as nurturing and kind and having saved the founders of Rome. Hi, baby. Thank you. So, two different cultures, two different perspectives on what wolves are like or what they bring to the table. Now, none of this involves their impact on their environments. These are just stories that we hear, fables that we hear growing up, right? Depending on what culture we're part of. So there are a ton of other cultures who, oh, thank you. He's going to come sit and tell stories. You telling stories, bud? Good boy. So in a lot of, actually, let's go with Norse culture, because I think this is a really fun one. So do you want to explain who Fenrir is? So, for those of you not familiar with Norse culture, Ragnarok is like the end of ends, right? So, in Norse mythology, Fenrir was the one to end things by devouring their god, Odin, or one of their gods, Odin. But Odin himself actually had two wolves that were his constant companions, and they represented loyalty and protection. So in one culture, we see two different examples of the duality of these animals, right? You want more brushies? Okay. So I'm not going to correct you because I have no idea. But that's just one example of one culture having different representations. You also see this a lot in indigenous cultures. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that indigenous cultures all revere wolves as some sort of spirit animal or guide, but there are over 550 indigenous or different indigenous tribes here in the U.S., just in the U.S., that are recognized. So there's a lot of individual cultures that we're kind of lumping together that we shouldn't be. In some cultures, indigenous cultures, wolves are revered as a teacher, as a guardian, as a guide. Very noble, very well received. And then in other indigenous cultures, we see those same guides and teachers looked at as betrayers, as deceivers, warning of what happens when you trust the wrong thing. So you see a lot of that duality in different cultures. No, bud. Bless you. Cup. Okay. Absolutely. I'm getting a good spot. All right, bud. You happy? You want to sit right here when they're done? Are we going to tell stories? Come tell stories. No, he's gonna go poke her. It is very hot out today, so these guys are not super, super active. They're very, very lazy right now. Hey, you want to see? We're going to do the sprays. We're going to do the sprays. You ready? No. And there we go. What I'm spraying here is called avocado mist. This is a coat conditioner. Helps keep their coat and skin healthy, and because they're shedding out right now, I try to make sure that we keep their skin nice and moisturized and healthy so they don't get any kind of dandruff and they're not itchy. And because we're so active in grooming, it also allows us to see if there's any kind of injury or any kind of parasite like fleas. They're on preventative, but want to make sure that they're taken care of. Can I spray you again? Oh, right there. Yeah. Yeah, so he has a bite on his butt. But to be fair, he deserved it. So, here. He likes rubbing his face on it, but only on the rocks. Here. There you go. Yeah. Well, okay, let's say you live in an area, and because the United States, I'm just going to use the United States as an example because that's, where we are at, that's what we know and are most familiar with. But let's say you live in a part of the United States where there is heavy livestock production, right? Where your state is known for agribusiness. And you are raised your whole life thinking that wolves are a pest or a nuisance. When you become of age to vote, and you have been told your whole life that these animals are dangerous and that they are violent and that they are going to harm you or your family or your friend's livelihood, how do you think you're going to vote when it comes to wolf conservation? So, by contrast, if you're raised in an environment where there is no agribusiness, and let's say wolves don't even exist in your state, there's no native wolves in your state, but you have very progressive views, or your state has very progressive views on conservation in general or environmentalism in general, and you're familiar with, he is asleep. That is, he is done. You okay, bud? Can I pet you? A piece of grass in your eye. Go. There you go. Good boy. Okay, you have another piece of grass. So, the environment in which you're raised, right, and the cultures in which you are raised, they will influence how you vote on conservation issues, just because you may be fed information that is siloed, that's only coming from a certain perspective or viewpoint, right? And what we try to do here is not silo anything. Like this, that's the whole point of this conservation conversation, is there is a duality to the nature of wolves, right? they are incredibly beneficial to their ecosystems and the environment. They are a keystone species. They are incredibly important for biodiversity, but they're also a nuisance to agribusiness. Both things can be true at the same time, right? They are not mutually exclusive. So we have to figure out a way, because they're so important to the environment and to their ecosystems, we have to figure out ways to ensure their survival in the wild while also learning to coexist with them and not heavily impact anybody's livelihood while doing so. And I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. I don't have fly spray with me. I'm sorry, bud. I can go get it in a second. Flies are bothering him. And probably. So ever since we started talking about our Aerial Allies program, right? And talking about the benefits of non-lethal livestock and wolf management, conflict management, we have received a lot of comments, a lot of, I'm not even going to be nice about it, a lot of trolling where people are like, well, if we were all vegan and we didn't raise any animals for meat, we just let nature be, we wouldn't have to worry about non-lethal livestock conflict management. And I said it before, they're right. If we lived in a completely alternate reality, then yes, we wouldn't have to worry about this. But we live in this reality. And it is, I don't want to say it's impossible. Like maybe one day humanity will shift to a completely different diet. But right now, that's not the case. And if we don't do something to address the issue right now, then we're failing. So not having any ranches or agribusiness is not an option. Right now they exist, and right now we need solutions. So that's why we look at non-lethal methods, which help wolves stay safe, help livestock stay safe, and creates a win-win scenario for everybody. Better? Okay. That was my shirt shifting. My bad. So, yeah, I'll end my rant and I'll step off my soapbox now. But this is why, again, duality is a really important thing to talk about, because our job is to show you all the perspectives, the benefits that they have, and the detriments that they can have. But I'll get off my soapbox now. No, no. No, for sure. For sure. I mean, that's why Aerial Allies exists, right? We think that some of the research that's being done with drone hazing and wolves is super innovative and cutting edge, and there are so many more questions that we need answered before, we say thumbs up, this is a great conflict management method that everybody should use. But I lost my train of thought. Okay. I think he might have. I lost my train of thought because I saw a wasp. I was having a moment where, like, do I get up and move? And then he hadn't seen it yet, because he'll chase them. And I don't know if he saw a squirrel. For those of you unaware, Tibby is afraid of squirrels. He thinks that they are the scariest animal in nature. All right, you were going to say? So wolves in general, they're a keystone species because they keep prey animal levels in check. So the simplified version is there are too many deer on a landscape, wolves are introduced, they're an apex predator, they naturally prey on those animals, so they reduce those population numbers, and that naturally has an effect on the landscape. So Yellowstone is always the example that I go to because it's the most recent study here in the last 30 years where wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone and they had a positive impact on that landscape because they changed the grazing patterns and behaviors of the elk and deer population that were there. Those elk and deer were overgrazing those valley floor areas around those rivers and streams. So they had a negative impact on the landscape because they didn't have, or smaller species, smaller animals didn't have any cover to den or to nest. Plant species were being not killed off, but were being minimized and were not able to thrive because ungulates like deer and elk were grazing them when they were saplings or when they were produced. Streams, instead of providing a really rich and healthy environment for aquatic species, they were widening because they had no roots along their banks to strengthen those banks to ensure that the water flow didn't spread wide. So wolves had a significant impact there, but it isn't just Yellowstone. They have this impact, and I don't want to say the same impact, but they have similar impact elsewhere where they're able to help control those prey numbers and help balance that ecosystem. Another really cool example is chronic wasting disease. If you're not familiar with it, when ungulate populations, and ungulates are hoofed mammals like deer and elk, moose, when those hoofed mammals have too great of population numbers, they end up suffering chronic wasting disease, and wolves help prevent that by keeping those population numbers in check. Hey, Ivy! Yes. So everybody, if you do not know Ivy, you should go give her a follow at Conserving the Wolves. She has a Facebook group and she has her own website. She is a wonderful young lady who is I want to say for the last 7 years, correct me if I'm wrong, Ivy, but for the last 7 or 8 years has been super active and talking to people about the benefits that wolves bring to their environment, trying to dispel the myths and legends that we commonly hear about them. And she is 15 years old. She is our mentee in our Rising Voices program, and she hopefully in the next 6 months will be co-hosting this very program, talking about the myths and legends that we hear about wolves and how we want to dispel them. So she is amazing. She is baller. You should go support her in the work that she does, because I'm an old lady. Ivy is the future for advocacy. So please, 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 please go support her. She is awesome. So I like, am I gonna get in? It doesn't look bad on screen if I lay down, right? Like this is I don't look dead, right? Can you still hear me okay? Great. No, my back was hurting. Like I said, I'm an old lady, so this feels. Are you a good boy? You good boy. No, she said that's too much effort. I'm gonna make sure I wasn't eaten. Thank you. That's very kind of you. You are very, very welcome. I didn't make this happen. You are making this happen. You're the one putting in all the work. So, ah, sprays. Oh, absolutely. Again, that's why we do the work that we do, is because there are so many misconceptions out there about these animals. And as you can see, they're fine. Like, even when we take Tibby out, sometimes we will have people ask if he's going to attack, if he bites, if he's violent. And he is not at all that way. Granted, he was raised in a habituated in a domestic environment, and wild wolves are not. But his natural instinct, his inherent instinct, is to move away from people, not go towards them to violently attack. And we do have a no-touch policy on our animals, so even when they're out, we don't encourage people to touch them, just for his own comfort and benefit. And also because we want to showcase that wolves are not inherently friendly. Can you make an ambassador animal that way? Absolutely. There are plenty of people who have these types of animals that make them or habituate them to people to the level where you can hug them, you can play with them, and they're more akin to well-socialized domestic dogs. But that's not what we wanted in ours. We wanted ours to still show that they have hesitation towards people, hesitation towards new things, because we want to use them to explain and relate natural behaviors that we would see in wild wolves. So instead of being overly friendly, he is still reserved and aloof. And same with Wyatt, very reserved and aloof, because that's what we want people to think of when they think of wild wolves. We don't want them to think that they're going to come snatch up their wives and hide your wife, hide your kids. That's not what, right? I pulled that out. You're welcome. But, you know, we want to make sure that we are depicting an accurate story, or trying to relate these guys. Oh, see, he's asking to go out now. He's like, I would like to go back to my grass and my trees, please. Are you over it, bud? I don't know if you can see him. This might be off screen. He's in his makeshift little den hovel area. So yeah, absolutely. We hear these myths and legends, even if you're not from an agricultural community or a progressive community. We hear these myths and legends about wolves, and we form this perception of them. And I'll tell you a really cool story, actually. So in my interpretive guide course, when I got my certification for interpretation, we had folks from all kinds of cultural heritage sites, all kinds of historic sites, and some zoological institutions. And one of the things that we have to do for that course is give a presentation, and I did essentially this with my class. And it was fun and great, but the feedback I got was that I found incredibly surprising was even the folks from zoological institutions had misconceptions about what these animals are like. Like, I didn't realize that you could interact with them that way. I thought that they were going to be more aggressive. And to me, especially somebody who works in a zoological institution, I did not think that they would have that misconception. But it goes to show that even folks who are working in an industry that deals with all types of animals from a conservation standpoint has the wrong perception or an incorrect perception of what these animals are like. Oh. You want this up? No. Yeah, ignorance isn't it means that you are, it's not willful ignorance. That's, oh, you want to eat your fluff? This is my life. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to take it now. I'm going to take it. Thank you for doing that. No, he does not. He's upset that I'm holding his ball of fluff. Hey, you want this? No. This is the joy of working with live animals, guys, is you don't really know what they're going to do. And I was collecting all this fluff so I didn't have to try to chase it down and break it up later. But Tibby says, I don't like it. What happened? Did I get up and disturb your whole nap time? And then I touched your fluff? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I think that's a really cool story that I get to share now, is that even somebody who worked in a zoological facility actively with animals had this misconception about wolves and how aggressive they are. But that's that's also not to say that they're not aggressive. They can be. They can be very protective and resource guardy, but we also encourage that behavior to an extent because it showcases what they have to do in the wild and what that means, how that translates, what that behavior looks like, and why it's instinctual to them. And you even see it in domestic dogs sometimes. Sometimes domestic dogs get a little bit resource guardy over their food or toys or even people. These guys are the same way. If I try to go be friendly and love on Wyatt, 9 times out of 10, Tibby is going to tell me, no, you are my person and nobody gets to interact with you unless I say so. So he'll get a little possessive in that way, but not with people, just with her. He tries to bully her because he's the dominant one in this pairing. So he is the one to eat first. He is the one to get toys first. He is the one to get social interaction first. But when people think of aggressiveness, they think of they're going to tear a carcass up or steal your baby or violently attack you. And they don't. I've been working with large canids for over 20 years, and I haven't been stolen, I haven't been eaten, and I haven't, knock on wood, suffered any major violent attack. So yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I was going to say there was, I think, 1 or 2 cases where there was a starving wolf that attacked a person or a person's dog, and then another that had rabies, which causes super uncharacteristic behaviors in all animals, not just canids. So, but yeah, there have been more people literally eaten by bears than have been accosted by wolves. But I think we look at bears and have a very great respect and reverence for these animals. 1, because they're massive, and 2, because they're massive. So, like, yeah. So I've been fortunate enough to be up close and personal with several bears, including a grizzly, and they were captive animals. These were not wild animals. I'm not that brave or dumb, depending on how you look at it. I would like to give them a very healthy distance in the wild and not encroach on their territory. But that said, they are huge, and we have a great respect for them because they're just impressively large, massive animals. Great apex predators. And again, I think we have a healthy respect for that because they're huge. They're like a VW bug. They're massive animals. I cannot say that enough. So when you have that perception, they're great hunters. You have this reverence for them, and this almost inherent fear of them because they're so big, because they're so different. And I think, and this is my own opinion here, I think because we have domestic dogs, as companion animals that are roughly the same shape and size as these guys, we forget how different they are. But I also feel like the duality of that is, for some reason, we have way more fear of wild wolves than we do of nearly any other wild creature, save sharks. I watched Jaws too many times, and you will never catch me in open waters, ever, ever, ever. I still double check the pool if I'm swimming. I still get that uneasy feeling in a pool. So, you know, it was an effective movie and book. Yeah, yeah. But but let's talk about that for a second. Like, I watched Jaws. I have no intention of visiting open waters anytime soon. And I have been shark diving. I have been in open waters before with sharks. Super fortunate, got to dive with tiger shark. She was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And sharks are incredibly important to their environment. They're fantastic animals, they're super beneficial, but I have a healthy fear of them because of Jaws. And I think the myths and legends and media that we watch, and Paul, you can attest to how much I love the Liam Neeson movie, The Grey. Love it. Love it, love it, love it, because I love Liam Neeson. Don't judge. He's fantastic. I will watch Taken as many times as necessary just to see that man. But The Grey is a movie about Liam Neeson and folks in a plane crash trying to survive the wilderness but being stalked by wolves. And nearly everything we see in that movie about wolves is a complete myth. It is portraying them as unnecessarily aggressive and overly aggressive, when wolves would be the complete opposite. So, does it do us any favors? No. I love the movie because it's a movie. Just like I love Jaws, it is my top 5. Love Jaws. But because I work with these guys, because I've had hands-on experience with them, I don't look at movies in the media with wolves the same way that I do Jaws for some reason. I don't work with sharks. So, fantastic animals, super important. Still going to be a little bit apprehensive going into open water. But I have no fears when it comes to wolves in the wild, only because I have worked with these guys for so long. But most people haven't, right? Most people have not had that same experience. They don't get up close and personal with these guys. They don't get to see their silly antics, games, and that changes their perception. So when you see a movie like The Grey and you have no knowledge of wolves, you think, holy shit, that could happen to me. It can't. It won't. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's myth and legend just continue to perpetuate this negative stereotype. And there are, if we're talking about duality, there are good examples. Anybody in my age bracket generation is gonna know the movie Balto, is gonna know the Journey of Natty Gann, is gonna know White Fang. And those are all movies where there were wolves or wolf hybrids that were depicted in a positive light. Also completely, complete fiction. Like Journey of Natty Gann, there was this wolf that was supposed to be this young girl's companion. But wolves aren't people animals. They aren't. I cannot see a wild wolf ever walking up to somebody and being like, cool, I'll take care of you. Like, I just, that's just not something that's going to happen. But it flips the switch to romanticizing the relationships that we have with these animals. And let me be very clear. I love these guys. They are fantastic, but they are lethal animals. I have no doubt that if I didn't respect them as individuals, the species that they are, and the boundaries that we have, that if I pushed and forced, it would end up in a really bad situation, not for them, but for me. So there's a healthy respect that you need to have for these animals in captivity, but you also see media romanticizing this. So just as much as they vilify them in The Grey or any kind of fairy tale adaptation, there's actually a movie called Fabled, and it's a weird psychological movie, but they have a fable that was written for the movie where the wolf was super, super friendly and just wanted to be liked and wanted a friend, and a crow befriended him, but just to be a dick, basically. And the crow told farmers that he was evil. I mean, it was just a huge convoluted story, but at the end, the wolf became what the legend was, just a negative stereotype, but that's not how it started out. It was really interesting. The movie was awful, but the fable portion of it was pretty interesting. So I have all the thoughts on that movie because I do love that movie. There were some issues in regards to its production and whatnot with indigenous cultures. However, I do think that it is the portion with Two Socks the wolf and the main character, John Dunbar, trying to establish a relationship with this animal. Finally getting this animal to be comfortable around humans only to be shot and killed later. Like, it's awful, and it's my least favorite part of that movie because you see this wolf get shot and it hurts. As somebody who's an advocate, that hurts. But yeah, Dances with Wolves is fantastic. I love it. It's one of my favorite Kevin Costner movies. And if you are a Kevin Costner fan, Field of Dreams is highly underrated and you should watch it, especially if you like baseball. So, I think I was supposed to tie this back to the ecological importance of wolves. I think that's what you asked, right, Paul? Okay. So, when you look at the duality of wolves and how they're portrayed, it absolutely influences how you vote, the actions or steps that you take when it comes to conservation or the environment. So if you only grew up on myths and legends that are negative and you have this negative perception of these animals, you may think of them as aggressive or violent or scary or dangerous. You may not know that the counterpart to that is that they're incredibly beneficial for the environment, that they are a keystone species. But in order to present their story, you need to be able to tell both parts, right? Like, these aren't fluffy unicorns that are going to be my best friend. They are lethal apex predators that have a place in the environment that happens to be incredibly important. They deserve respect, and we need, as people, to be able to respect those boundaries. And when we are encroaching where boundaries are overlapping, we need to find a way to coexist. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I agree. And I think that's why a lot of advocacy groups are working towards changing legislation so that we see non-lethal methods be the first stop, right? We would like to see that as the forefront of managing a species, managing a predatory species, right? And that's not just for wolves. I think that's the same for any predator that could potentially cause an issue with that livestock or agribusiness. We're, I know I keep mentioning drones, but we're really into it. So, well, I mean, the technology is there, the innovation is there. Existing methods like Flandry, effective for maybe 60 to 90 days. Livestock guardian dogs, they can be effective, but depending on how big your agribusiness operation is, it may be wholly ineffective to have a handful of dogs because you have animals or cattle that are spread across public lands, that are spread across harsh terrain, and you're not going to have enough coverage there. Additionally, you have range riders, but that's manpower, time, and investment. They can only be in one place at one time. Fencing, which is effective if you have a smaller ranch, or don't graze on public lands. But a lot of livestock operations utilize public lands. They lease public lands for that purpose. And you can't improve upon that land, meaning you can't build fencing on that land. You can't utilize a lot of the methods that would be effective on that land. So as we look for alternatives, drones seem to be a cool thing. They're also developing the ground version of that, which is like little RC cars that have lights and sound and are essentially remote controlled and remote activated. Right? So our government is working on cool things. Like, this is not our research. This isn't even another advocacy group's research. This is the USDA and Wildlife Services who are actively working towards finding solutions that benefit both parties. So when we say we're super supportive of it, we mean it. We were actually just awarded a grant to help with this. We were awarded a $25,000 grant specifically for supporting this research and bolstering an awareness campaign. This is incredibly important to get additional answers to see if this is a viable solution, you know? But we have to respect the duality of the animal. We want to have a win-win scenario. Because, like I said, both things can be true at once. They are a menace to livestock in a lot of situations, and they are also incredibly important as a species to the environment. So let's find a solution that works. It's a win-win. Sky. They're so tired. If I just gonna toss. No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Hey, bird. Wyatt. Nothing. Hi. Oh, wow. Me either. Um, I don't think we have a ton left to cover, but let's keep the conversation going for sure. Mm-hmm. It's a national treasure. Mm-hmm. Well, no, because we're a society that likes. I'm gonna disturb. I know. She's so upset right now because I'm gonna disturb her like sleepy time. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to move. Collecting hair because Tibby sucks. Um, I'm sorry, not sorry, Tibby. Um, so I do think that Frozen Planet's a great example of kind of showcasing a little bit more of the reality of these animals. And you're right, there's no inherent drama there. Uh, so it's really hard to, make it binge worthy if nature isn't your thing. Um, because we, as a society, we have looked at Real Housewives of Orange County and manufactured drama, and we look at that like that's good TV. We like the drama. We like the reality TV. We like true crime. So we like the real drama. We like the manufactured reality. But when it's just these guys doing this all day, like there's not a lot of excitement here. Um, and unless you're observing a specific wolf pack, you're not going to see a lot of you're not going to see a lot of the social interactions that can be really dramatic, right? Also, I don't know if you have Discord open, but you should shut it because I can hear it on the phone or on this call. So, please. No way. So I'm just talking to myself. This is great. I'm sorry. This is fantastic and I love it. This is great. Um, why are you going to be right back? Oh, okay. Um, so what I was saying is that we love drama as a society, as a species, and when you are not seeing that in nature, because nature is not as dramatic as the Real Housewives of whatever, or the manufactured reality TV that we see. But we rarely have opportunities to observe wolf packs in the wild without interfering in their behaviors or disturbing their behaviors. So we aren't seeing the inherent drama that kind of comes along with raising new generations of pups, or the challenges that they may face. But they're still fascinating animals. We just don't have a large chance or opportunity to observe them in the wild without really disturbing them. Can you imagine just watching 8 hours of this? They sleep all day. They're crepuscular, so they're only active, not only, but majority of the time they're active during dawn and dusk. But during the day, they're not all that entertaining, especially when it's super warm out. And it's not that bad today. It's actually a nice day. Super nice breeze under the shade of the trees. But
Okay, I'm back.
hello, welcome back.
I don't know if they can hear me at all, but I'm back to talk to you, so you sound crazier. I'm not really sure.
I like to think that I sound crazier because they can't hear you. So I'm like responding and talking about things without, the counterbalance here. It's a little weird, but that's great. I love it. We should just run a test session this week. Like, come watch us work out our audio issues again.
Yeah. I definitely feel like the audio issues are persistent. It's like it changes every week. So
It really does. And we haven't changed the settings, guys. Like there seems to be an issue every week with our audio or AV equipment. At first we had a battery that wasn't lasting to its max shelf life, so we had to replace the battery for the camera. Then we had the battery die on the microphone that I'm wearing. I had to reorder batteries for that. Then we had audio issues with Bluetooth, which is the earpieces that I'm wearing right now. And then now apparently nobody can hear Paul talking except me, which I think is fantastic because you guys have missed out on some really fun conversations here. Oh, man.
Yep. I don't understand it. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a test session where it's live, and we just have to
Just play with it, see what's up.
just play with it, see what's wrong.
So, all right. So with that said, maybe we should just cut it for today, because you are missing the conversational part of this dialogue, which is kind of the whole point of conservation conversations, is having a conversation and inviting you guys to have the conversation as well and chime in and give your perspective. So not being able to hear half of that conversation is kind of a bummer. And super entertaining for me. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I say we cut it today and we'll come back next week. Next week, for the last couple of weeks, we haven't had conservation conversations because we were rained out. Assuming that does not happen, we will be back talking a little bit more about myths and legends and how they affect conservation as we know it today, the impact that they've had both in the present and historically. And we might also tackle, you might get a 2-for-1. You may also get like lunar mythology and conservation, which is pretty fun. So, I'll say goodbye on behalf of the Puffy Woofs, who are just completely tuned out today. I will say goodbye on behalf of Paul, who you cannot hear. So
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. I'm gonna go turn it off, so it will be cut in like 10 seconds.
all right. So have a good one, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, Ivy. I will catch you next week. Next week? Week after. I will catch you at some point. I think it's next week. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.